The sandstorm had settled hours before sunset, leaving behind a stillness that clung to the barren dunes like a secret. The only sign of life in the vast desert was the hum of a cooling engine and the soft crunch of boots in the sand. Captain Elias Wren crouched beside the open hatch of his battered scout vessel, his eyes locked on the child in front of him. Her curls were tangled. Her small hands clutched a ragged stuffed toy, and her wide, amber eyes flicked between Elias and the towering alien figure who knelt beside her. The alien woman's name was Sarai, though that single word barely contained her presence. She was a sentinel of the now-defunct Valerie Covenant, a species both revered and feared during the height of the Galactic Accord. Her skin shimmered like twilight, stretched over a frame that was both graceful and formidable. Sarai watched the child not with the clinical detachment her kind were known for, but with a curiosity that edged on something more intimate, protective, even. "She hasn't spoken since we pulled her from the wreck," Elias said, not looking up. His voice was low, worn. "No ID, no implants, no records. It's like she just appeared." Sarai's gaze didn't leave the child. "Children do not simply appear, Captain." "No, but this one might as well have." He ran a hand through his dark, sand-dusted hair. "We were following up on a distress signal from a derelict freighter. Whole crew dead. Systems wiped. Just her, sitting in the med bay, calm as a void." The little girl reached up and touched Sarai's outstretched hand. Sarai's eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but recognition. A thread of something unspoken passed between them, ephemeral and electric. Elias stood and folded his arms. "You feel it too, don't you?" Sarai nodded once. "She is not ordinary." That's one way to put it. The silence between them was a living thing, punctuated only by the distant crackle of the cooling engines. The child had no name, but Elias had started calling her Nova, mostly because it felt right. She hadn't objected, hadn't said anything, in fact, just followed him silently after the rescue, her tiny hand in his, her gaze always scanning the horizon like she expected it to collapse inward. "Someone wanted her erased," Elias said, voice taut. "Not just gone, obliterated. I've never seen data purge like that, not even in Black Ops." Sarai rose, impossibly fluid, and looked toward the horizon. The twin moons had begun their ascent, painting the sky in silver. "You know what this means?" "That someone's willing to kill entire crews to keep her hidden?" "Yeah, I got that part." No, Sarai turned to face him fully. "It means they will come for her." Elias swallowed, jaw tight. I figured. He had expected his journey back to the outer colonies would be quiet. Just a contract-run hauling scrap from a decommissioned planetary defense fleet. No politics, no wars, no moral dilemmas. Instead, he found a child with no past and an alien warrior who had no reason to care, yet refused to leave her side. It was the kind of thing that had a gravity to it. Pulling him into a story he didn't ask to be part of, Nova tugged gently at Sarai's long fingers. The alien knelt again, lowering herself to eye level. "You know who you are, don't you?" she asked softly. Nova didn't reply, but her hand tightened around Sarai's. Elias watched them, a strange warmth battling the unease that had lived in his chest since the freighter. He looked at Sarai. "You really think she's one of yours?" Sarai hesitated. "Not precisely, but there is something aligned. I was bonded to Covenant's Nexus core, Elias. I remember every pulse of its energy. This child resonates on the same frequency." "Great," Elias muttered. "So not just hunted, important." "That is an understatement." Elias sighed. "So what's our play?" Sarai turned toward the ship. "We leave now, before dark. The signal we tripped retrieving her. It wasn't just a distress beacon. It was a marker. For who?" Sarai's expression darkened. "Not who. What?" Elias didn't press. He'd seen what Sarai could do when she didn't want to talk. Entire brigades had learned the hard way before the Valerie vanished from galactic affairs. Nova reached out and took Elias's hand in her other one, linking them together. For a moment, nothing moved. The desert, the ship, even the wind. All paused around the three of them like the universe itself was holding its breath. Then the sky behind them shimmered. Just a flicker, almost imperceptible. but Sarai saw it first. Her eyes snapped toward the disturbance, and her voice cut like a blade. Inside. Now. Elias didn't hesitate. He scooped Nova into his arms and sprinted toward the ship, Sarai close behind, already manipulating the access panel with a blur of movement. The hatch sealed behind them just as the shimmer in the air began to coalesce. Inside, the ship came alive, systems flaring as Sarai fed it commands faster than Elias could track. Nova nestled into his chest, finally letting out a soft sound. Not a word, but a note, like a harmonic ripple through the cabin. Elias blinked. "Did you feel that?" Sarai didn't answer. Her hands hovered over the console, motionless for the first time. "She's not just being hunted," she said, almost to herself. "She's calling to something." Outside, in the twilight, the shimmer formed a shape, vaguely humanoid. Not alive, not machine. Something older. The engines ignited. The ship lifted into the darkening sky, leaving only scorched sand and a vanishing trace of what had just arrived. And far below, the shape watched them go, waiting. The ship shuddered as it broke through the upper atmosphere, metal groaning in protest as if it sensed the weight of what it carried. Elias gripped the flight controls, jaw clenched, watching the NAV system struggle to stabilize. Gravity fell away in slow degrees, and for a brief moment, it felt like they might fall forever. Then the stars snapped into place across the viewport, and the silence of open space enveloped them. Sarai stood behind him, still and statuesque, her violet skin glowing softly under the ship's flickering lights. Nova sat between them, strapped into a makeshift crash seat, legs swinging as if none of the danger applied to her. Her expression remained unreadable, yet her eyes followed the stars like they were old friends whispering something just out of reach. "You need to tell me what that thing was," Elias said, not turning. Sarai's answer came after a pause too long to be comfortable. "An echo, or something like it. That's not helpful. I do not offer comfort. I offer truth. And the truth is, I do not know what it has become." Elias glanced at her. "You've seen them before." "Only once," she said, and her voice carried a weight that turned the cabin colder. "Long before the Covenant fell, when we were still guardians of the Nexus, we found traces of them in the void between galaxies, residues of thought, intelligence without body. They don't belong here." Elias turned fully now. "But this one's here." Sarai nodded, and it is responding to her. Nova looked up at the mention of herself, not startled, just aware. She tilted her head slightly, as though considering whether or not to speak. But again, she said nothing. Elias had started to believe that silence was a choice, not a limitation. "What does it want?" he asked. Sarai looked at Nova, her gaze softening in a way that made Elias question everything he'd assumed about her species. To reconnect, to control, or to consume. I cannot say which. Elias leaned back, exhaling slowly. "I picked up a child. I didn't sign up for an ancient mind war across the galaxy." "No," Sarai agreed, "but you didn't leave her behind either. That choice carries weight." He looked at Nova again, feeling the truth of it settle heavy on his chest. There was a power to her, not the explosive kind that made soldiers or weapons, but the silent kind that reshaped the rules around her just by existing. She was the eye of a storm that hadn't yet begun. The ship's proximity alert pinged softly. "Contact," Sarai said, already moving toward the scanner panel. 3 ships, vectoring from the Hadari drift. Elias swore under his breath. "Corsairs." Sarai scanned the telemetry. Modified frames. Pirate class, but outfitted with military tech. Not scavengers. Elias pulled up the data. "They were waiting." "Not for you," Sarai said. "For her." Nova's eyes flicked toward the viewport. Her lips parted for the first time, as if she might say something. Then she reached forward, placing her hand on the console. It was a small movement, quiet, effortless, but the ship responded instantly. Systems realigned. Engines hummed with newfound clarity. Shields flickered into place. Fully charged in under a second. Elias stared. What did she just... She interfaced, Sarai said, voice hushed. "That's not possible." Apparently it is. Outside, the Corsairs were closing in. Elias spun the ship into a defensive vector. I can lose them if we hit the cloud belt around Arvinos. They will follow, Sarai said, and we cannot outrun what we don't understand. He met her eyes. Then we stand and fight. She looked down at Nova. No, we let her choose. The girl looked up at Sarai, then at Elias. For the first time, she opened her mouth and spoke. Her voice small, steady, and resonant. Go to the quiet moon. Elias blinked. What? Set course, she said again, pointing at a section of the star map that hadn't been touched in centuries. That place is off the grid, Elias muttered. Uncharted, uninhabited, dangerous. Sarai was already entering the coordinates. You believe her? Elias asked. She is not asking, Sarai replied. She's guiding. Elias watched the course lock in. The ship jumped to FTL, stars stretching into lines, and the Corsairs vanished behind them like ghosts in the wake. The cabin dimmed. The silence returned. Nova leaned back in her seat, eyes closing, as though the choice had taken something from her. Elias studied her. This quiet, impossible child who now controlled more than he could understand. And yet, despite everything, he felt no fear. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Sarai broke the quiet. The quiet moon isn't just a myth, Elias. It was a place of resonance, where the old Valerie went to dream and to hide. What are we hiding from? He asked. Sarai stared at the starlines beyond the glass. Not what? She said. Who? And somewhere, far behind them, the echo that had formed in the desert began to divide. Not lost, not confused, simply patient. It had found her once. It would do so again. The ship emerged from hyperspace into the shadows of a broken orbit. The quiet moon hung in the void like a half-remembered dream, cracked along its equator and spinning with an eerie slowness. Its surface shimmered with strange, refractive light, neither natural nor artificial, but something in between, ancient, forgotten, and very much alive. Elias stared at it in silence, hands still on the flight. Controls of the ship had settled into orbit without any input. It had guided itself the last few seconds, nudged by Nova's influence like a ship following a homing signal no one else could hear. This place shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Sarai stepped forward, her expression unreadable. It was hidden, folded between dimensional layers. Valerie's science did not create it. We only discovered it. And now she's brought us back. They turned to look at Nova, who stood at the viewport, one small hand pressed to the glass. Her reflection shimmered strangely, as if it weren't quite aligned with the rest of her. Her face was calm, but her breathing had changed, shallow, deliberate, as though she were preparing for something. Sarai crossed the cabin. Are you sure this is where we're meant to be? Nova didn't answer immediately. Then, without turning, she said, They left something here for me. Elias stepped closer. Who did? She looked at him. The ones who knew what I'd become. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of realization. Weight, like gravity, increasing in a room that wasn't built to hold it. Sarai's voice was low. Then this is no longer just a refuge. Elias checked the sensors. Atmosphere's thin, but breathable. No signals. No movement. That doesn't mean it's dead, Sarai murmured. It means it's waiting. They landed on a plain of pale, ash-colored stone. Crystalline ridges jutted from the ground like frozen lightning, and pale light seeped up through the cracks beneath their feet. As they disembarked, Nova walked ahead of them, barefoot and unafraid, like the air itself welcomed her presence. Elias watched her move. She's never been here. How does she know where to go? Sarai didn't answer. She didn't need to. They followed Nova through a ruined corridor carved into the rock, Valerie architecture, but changed. Warped by time or something older. Symbols lined the walls, glowing faintly as they passed, resonating to Nova's proximity. With each step, the corridor deepened, becoming more cavern than construct, until they entered a chamber that breathed. That was the only way Elias could describe it. It breathed. The walls pulsed with dim internal light, slow and steady, like a resting heart. In the center stood a pedestal, etched in the same symbols, and hovering just above it, a crystalline shard, no larger than a child's hand. Nova approached, and the air changed, grew heavy and still. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. The shard began to spin, slowly, casting rays of fractured memory across the walls. Images bloomed, ghosts of a past not yet lived. Fleets consumed by invisible storms. Worlds folded into silence. And above it all, a presence, an intelligence that had no name, only intent. Elias staggered backward. "What is this?" Sarai stepped forward, her face pale. "It's a record, a warning, and a message." Nova looked at them both. They saw the echo coming. Before time counted it. They tried to stop it, couldn't, so they buried the weapon. Sarai's eyes widened. "You're the weapon." Nova nodded just once. Not to destroy. To remember. To resist. The shard flashed. The room pulsed. Elias turned in place, struggling to keep up. If she was made to resist it, why is it drawn to her? "Because resistance is its opposite," Sarai whispered. "And opposites attract. Entangle. One completes the other." The shard shattered in midair, not violently, but like a dandelion blown apart by breath. Its fragments drifted down and faded into Nova's skin, disappearing without a trace. She turned to them, face serene. "It knows I've awakened." Elias felt the ground shift beneath his boots, an imperceptible vibration that built into a hum. "We need to get off this moon. Now!" But Sarai shook her head. "Too late. Look!" Above them, the sky had darkened, not from clouds, but from something vast, a ripple in space like oil on water. From it, tendrils began to stretch down toward the surface, elegant and terrible, like fingers of God reaching for what it once lost. Nova stepped forward, facing the sky. Sarai moved to her side. "If you confront it now, it will try to bind you." "I'm not going to confront it," Nova said, her voice now layered, harmonic, like she was speaking in more than one place at once. "I'm going to show it what I've become." Elias grabbed Sarai's arm. "What if it takes her?" Sarai didn't move. "Then we lose everything." But Nova didn't run. She stood with her feet planted, her hands at her sides, and as the sky opened fully, light poured from her skin. Not a beam, not a blast. A memory, vast and defiant. The echo paused, and in that moment of hesitation, something fractured, an old tether broken, a loop uncoiled. Nova turned back to Elias, her voice soft again. "Now we run." They didn't argue. As they raced back to the ship, the sky above folded on itself, the tendrils retreating, uncertain for the first time in ages. Whatever Nova had shown it, whatever message had been encoded in her, was not finished, but it had struck a blow. Inside the ship, as they broke free of the moon's pull, Elias looked back once. The moon was changing. Light moved through its veins now, pulsing outward like a beacon. A beginning, not an end. Sarai touched the controls beside him. "It will follow." He nodded. "Let it. We'll be ready." Nova sat between them again, silent, glowing faintly, the shard's memory still echoing within her. She closed her eyes, and the stars shifted. They had not ended the war, but they had finally begun it. The starfield was motionless, unnervingly still. No hyperspace blur, no planetary drift. Just a void, wide and quiet, as if the galaxy itself had paused to listen. Elias stood at the edge of the flight deck, arms crossed, eyes on the black. The ship hadn't moved in 2 hours. Not from malfunction, but by Nova's will. She brought them here, nowhere, a coordinate less fold between systems. A hidden silence. "She says we're safe," Sarai said behind him, her voice carrying a hush of reverence and fear. "For now." He turned. "She say that in words or in one of those feelings she beams into your skull?" "She's not beaming anything. I've trained to sense resonance." Her presence hums through the ship like music on the floorboards. Sarai folded her arms. "I used to think the Valerie were the apex of sentient evolution. We were just scribbling the first notes." Elias stared toward the corridor that led to the med bay. She's still a child. No, she just wears one shape. Nova had been asleep, or something like it, for an hour. After the moon, her energy had dimmed, like a system forced into low power to conserve what remained. When Elias checked on her, she was curled up, small and fragile. But the moment she opened her eyes, the stars had stopped. "I don't like drifting," he said. "Then ask her to release the ship," Sarai offered. "See what she says." Elias scowled. "She trusts you more." "No, she's just quieter around you." He raised an eyebrow. "That supposed make me feel better?" Sarai said nothing. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the bulkhead, where faint flickers of light moved to the metal like distant lightning in deep water. The ship itself had changed. Systems responded before being touched. Power sources replenished faster than physics allowed. Elias had flown old military hulls most of his life, knew their language like breath. But this vessel now spoke in tongues he didn't recognize. "You ever think we might be in over our heads?" he asked. "All the time," Sarai replied. "But I think staying grounded is overrated." Elias smirked, then exhaled sharply. "So what's the next move?" "We can't hide forever." Sarai stepped closer to the NAV console. "We're not hiding. She's listening." "To what?" "Everything." Just then, the ship jolted, subtle, like a pulse rippling through water. Lights dimmed. Gravity faltered for a breath. Elias reached instinctively for controls, but they lit up on their own, aligning into a shape he hadn't programmed. A single word appeared on the central screen. Mirrodin. Sarai's voice dropped. "That's a name." Elias nodded slowly. "A place." "More like a ghost story. Ancient Wartech research facility, blacklisted centuries ago. No maps, no comms. Even the Valerie avoided it." Nova stepped onto the deck, without a sound. She looked rested, but her expression was distant. "Half here, half elsewhere. I have to go there," she said. "Why?" Elias asked. "Because it remembers me." Sarai exchanged a glance with him. Mirrodin was lost during the synthetic uprising. It was said to house the earliest minds created to challenge the Echo. Minds that broke themselves trying. Nova walked to the console and placed her hand gently on the screen. They didn't break. They slept. Elias shook his head. "Why wake them now?" "Because I can't fight alone." The words were simple, but they landed like thunder. Sarai spoke cautiously. "They might not remember who they are, or what side they were on." Nova's voice didn't waver. "I'll remind them." The ship surged forward, drawn not by engines but by intent. Systems aligned. Coordinates resolved out of the void, like a whisper finally caught in the right wind. Mirrodin was real, and it waited. Elias slumped into the pilot's chair. "I'm starting to think this ship doesn't need a pilot anymore." "You were never just a pilot," Sarai said softly. He looked at her. "Then what am I?" "The one she chose to believe in." Nova moved to stand beside him. She reached for his hand, not with urgency, but trust. He let her fingers curl into his, small and warm and impossibly still. Outside the viewport, the void shifted. Not a starfield, something else. A veil pulled back, and there it was. Mirrodin, a broken station strung across the bones of a dead moon, its architecture angular and alive, flickering with ancient light. Massive conduits stretched into the vacuum, harvesting energy from nothing. Its structure shimmered between states, phasing like it couldn't decide what reality to belong to. Elias stared. "How is that thing still powered?" Nova answered, her voice distant. "Because it never stopped dreaming." The ship began docking procedures without command. Sarai read the data streaming in. No active defenses. No life signs. But something's running the core systems. "Something?" Elias repeated. "A mind," Nova said. "Old. Hurt. But still listening." They touched down on a platform, surrounded by silence. Beyond it, black doors loomed, sealed by time, but beginning to part. Not in welcome, in recognition. Elias stood, taking a breath that didn't calm him. Whatever's in there, we're walking into its memory. Nova nodded. "And its pain." Sarai stepped forward, eyes narrowed. Then let's not get lost in it. The doors opened fully, and the dark sang. Not words, not commands. A harmonic code, pulsing with buried truths and forgotten names. Nova stepped through first, unafraid. Elias and Sarai followed. Whatever waited beyond would change everything. And somewhere, far behind them, the echo felt a shift in the pattern. For the first time in eons, it knew fear.